Greetings, adventurers. You like D&D? So do I, which is why I also like Goblin Slayer. For those of you who don't know, Goblin Slayer is an anime adapted from a manga, adapted from a light novel that takes heavy inspiration from D&D. Characters all have distinct roles, spellcasters have spell slots, and encounters are resolved just as much through clever use of spells and abilities as much as they are through strength and skill. But recently I got to wondering, what if the world of Goblin Slayer followed the actual rules of D&D? Well, we're going to find out by drawing up some character sheets using the rules of D&D 5th edition, starting with the show's namesake protagonist, the Goblin Slayer. So just to get the absolute most basic of details out of the way, Goblin Slayer is a human. Easy enough. Next, to figure out his class, and more importantly, his level. Goblin Slayer has a rank system for its adventurers made up of 10 ranks, which we can break down into 2 levels per rank. So Porcelain would be level 1 and 2, Obsidian would be 3 and 4, and Silver, which is Goblin Slayer's rank, would be 15 and 16. Since Goblin Slayer is pretty badass, we're going to go ahead and make him level 16. So the only question now is, what class? Well, as luck would have it, our first character is a multi-class character, with 15 levels to Fighter and 1 to Ranger. I'll explain why when we get into Feats and Features. For now, let's establish ability scores. To keep things simple, we'll be using the standard set of scores as provided in the 5th edition Player's Handbook. 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. Now, as a fighter, you'd expect the highest stat to go into strength, but not with Goblin Slayer. His deadliest tool has always been his intelligence, finding creative ways to kill goblins without having to combat them directly. So the 15 goes to intelligence. He's also very hard to keep down, indicating a high constitution, so that's where the 14 is going. Next are strength and dexterity, which get 13 and 12 respectively, because you don't need to be all that strong or fast to kill goblins, just smart. Next is wisdom, which gets a 10, because as clever as Goblin Slayer is, anyone willing to drop a cave on their head just to kill a few goblins can't be all that wise. And lastly, Charisma, which gets the 8 and the negative modifier, because we all know how good Goblin Slayer is with his words. Hard to be charismatic when all you talk about is goblins. And since he's a human, all of those scores go up by 1 point. Now to back up for a bit, for something I should have done when establishing his class and level, and that's background. The best background for Goblin Slayer is honestly the Haunted One background, since a core part of his character is the trauma he suffered from the goblin attack on his village. Next is his alignment, which is clearly true neutral, because Goblin Slayer doesn't care about good, evil, law, or chaos. Only goblins. Up next, he gets a total of 5 ability score improvements because of his 15 fighter levels, but we're going to spend 3 of them on the optional feats wheel. First, we'll give him the Sentinel feat, which will give him more opportunities to attack goblins. Next is Charger, so he can chase them down better, and finally Dungeon Delver, so he can avoid traps. For the last 2 improvements, we'll increase Dexterity and Constitution by 2 each, and with that, we have our modifiers. Now for the proficiencies. As a fighter, he gets proficiency in all weapons and armor, and as a human, he knows Common and 1 other language. Since he was trained by Burglar Baggins, I think we can assume Halfling. He also gains 1 exotic language from the Haunted One background. This isn't really important, so we'll just make it Abyssal for funsies. We'll also give him proficiency in Investigation and Survival from his background, and then Athletics, Intimidation, and Perception from his Fighter and Ranger levels. Since his first class was Fighter, he's proficient in Strength and Constitution saving throws. And with his proficiency bonus at +5, now we have our skill modifiers. Alright, time for Feats and Features. And the reason why we gave Goblin Slayer a level in Ranger, Favored Enemy, and Natural Explorer. Now obviously Goblin Slayer's favorite enemy would be goblins, so that's what we're giving him along with hobgoblins. Personally, I would love to lump all goblinoids together so we can include bugbears, but we're playing by the rules here. Next is Natural Explorer, and unfortunately the closest thing the handbook gives to caves is Underdark, which I feel isn't quite right, so we'll just give him Forest. Now moving on to Fighter, the first thing we have is Fighting Style. Since nothing else really fits, we'll go with Defense for the extra AC. Next is Second Wind, which will be a 1d10 plus 15, followed by Action Surge, 2 extra attacks, and Indomitable. And now for the fun part, his Martial Archetype. You could potentially make him a champion, but I personally like Battle Master. Since he has 15 fighter levels, he has 6 superiority dice, which are d10s instead of d8s. He also has a grand spanking total of 9 maneuvers, which will be Distracting Strike, Evasive Footwork, Goading Attack, Lunging Attack, Menacing Attack, Parry, Rally, Riposte, and Sweeping Attack, and his maneuver save DC will be 15. Next is Student of War, which gives him proficiency in one type of artisan tools. Since he does a lot of handiwork around the farm, I think Carpenter's tools make sense. Finally, we have Know Your Enemy and Relentless. Now on to inventory, starting with his trusty short sword and shield and his obviously half-plate armor. Like, I don't know what else you could call it. His short sword will have a +7 to hit and do a 1d6 +2 piercing damage, which is pretty decent for fighting goblins. And with his half-plate giving him 15 AC, plus his shield, dex modifier, and defense fighting style, he has a whopping 20 AC. No goblin is getting past that without a fight. Obviously, as a human, he has a movement speed of 30. Lastly is his hit points, which will calculate by using the average provided rather than rolling for it, totaling up to 133 hit points, with 16 d10 hit die. And there you have it, Goblin Slayer in full 5th edition glory. If you enjoyed this, then please stay tuned for the next video where I make a character sheet for Priestess. Farewell, adventurers.